5th of June every year marks the World Environment Day. This year's theme is ecosystem restoration. Our guest, who is a board member at Climate Strategies UK and Nigeria's country representative, World Council for Renewable Energy, Stanley Ijeoma, will be speaking about what Nigeria is doing so far to restore the ecosystem and what we can all do to join the movement. Welcome to the morning show, Stanley. It's good to have you with us.
Yeah, good morning.
All right. Now, let's talk about the 5th of June, which is World Environment Day. How significant is this day beyond commemorating it?
Yeah, June 5th every year has been designated as the day for the world to mark the World Environmental Day due to the importance of the environment. This started in 1972, almost half a century now. We have been having this celebration, and the importance of the environment to the economy, has been gaining currency, especially with the advent of climate change, with its disruptive and destructive impacts. So it's very, very important now that the message is being passed across, and the World Environment Day is the day that has been used as a platform, to get the government, to get the private sector, to get everybody, communities and development practitioners to really sit down, reflect and plan on how to integrate the environment into development master plans and economic growth blueprints. So this is very, very important.
Okay, and then for those who are listening and maybe they're used to hearing about environmental issues being raised from time to time, but don't really appreciate the extent of the problem, can you help us? The theme for this year is ecosystem restoration. Help us define how bad the problem is, particularly for us in Nigeria.
Yes, it's really, when you begin to imagine what our life would be without oxygen, what our life would be, or what life would be without the insects, and what our life would be without oceans and coastal areas and peatlands, so trees and forests. This is actually where the economy draws from. But the capitalist linear economic model of the last century, more than approximately the last century, has really misdirected and led the world onto some kind of, has led the world towards some kind of self-destruction, So, but climate change has come to really awaken that consciousness that the economy draws from the environment. The economy draws from the environment, unlike what politicians and corporate organizations would like you to believe, that the economy is the most important, and they degrade the environment in pursuit of narrow financial gains. So now, we now know that without the environment, there will be no economy. In fact, without the environment, life will not, we will not be alive to even pursue other objectives. So this is how important it is. The message is coming out reinforced by climate change, which, of course, Nigeria has what I call extreme exposure and high vulnerability to climate change. If you're starting from the extreme north, where you have the Lake Chad, drought and desertification, which has led to the Lake Chad, a 25 square kilometer body of water in the Sahel, losing 90% of its water, causing, stripping more than 30 million people their livelihood, because the four Lake Chad countries depend on that lake for their livelihood. So with 90% of that water gone, 90% of the livelihood of those communities there have gone. And, this is also one of the contributors of the insurgency that we are seeing in that area. Then you now have a lot of migration, people migrating towards the middle belt. And you have sea level rise in the coastal littoral states. So people are migrating people are being forced to migrate up north, coming towards the middle belt. People are being forced and displaced in the north, in the Lake Chad region. So the middle belt seems to be a hotspot of increasingly violent competition for food, fuel, and fiber. So that's how important this is. And we really should be able to properly dimension the issues and come up with a framework, broad framework, which, of course, we've had some of those captured in our nationally determined contribution, which we submitted in 2015. And I am aware that a couple of days, on the May 27, we submitted a revised, updated NDC where we expanded the economic sectors from 5 to 7, including water and waste sectors. So this is really very important. And for a country like Nigeria, we should be at the forefront, not just in Africa, globally, in pushing for sustainable development.
Interesting perspective, Stanley. Now, let's take a look at this. Climate change is a global phenomenon, no doubt. And of course, Nigeria is a signatory to global climate protocols over time. But how practical are we adopting issues raised by such climate summits?
Yeah, from 2015, when that Paris Agreement was adopted in Paris, so I would say pre-2015 and post-2015, really there is a lot of momentum here in Nigeria in terms of getting the frameworks that we need to be able to deal with these issues. From 2015 up until now, a lot of groundwork has been laid. And I'm aware that frameworks like the monitoring, reporting, and verification, we've submitted our NDCs, and now we have increased the ambition and updated the NDCs, expanding the economic sectors from 5 to 7, like I said previously. So it's really a whole lot that is happening, but the problem or the major challenges are actually at the subnational level, because with the environment, there are no geographical boundaries. So if the federal government is really doing a lot, so what's happening at the subnational level, what is happening at the local government level? So this is really where, if we are not really where we are supposed to be, but then even as we are, struggling at the federal level to be able to catch up with this, with our commitments and obligations, but at the subnational level, that is where we need to build a lot of momentum to catch up with what is happening at the federal level. So, it's work in progress, and I am involved in some of those projects that are, some of those development of frameworks that are ongoing and laying the groundwork. Okay. So we just submitted our third national communication, which is dimensioning our emission sources and sinks and reporting to the UNFCCC. I'm also aware that we've submitted the first biennial update reports, which also has a greenhouse gas inventory, identifying where our greenhouse gas sources and the sinks are also. I'm also aware that the second one is in development. I'm also aware, like I mentioned, we have also ramped up the ambition in the NDC, and we just last week submitted an updated version of the NDC to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So it's a lot going on. We are not where we should be, but my concern is actually at the subnational level, where we need to generate a lot of momentum. Most of the people manning the Environment Ministry and Environment Portfolio.
If you just hold your thoughts there, you said the economy draws from the environment. We'll come back and we'll continue the conversation after this break. Stay with us. Welcome welcome again. You're still watching The Morning Show, and we're still discussing World Environment Day with Stanley Ijeoma. Good to have you with us still. I wanted to just hark back to a statement you made earlier. You said a lot of times people undermine that understanding that the economy draws from the environment. And I want you to maybe help us bring that out a bit more. There is an understanding that Africa, even though Africa isn't a key pollutant when it comes to global emissions, will end up being the ones that suffer the most, essentially the global dumping ground. So how do you motivate people to be part of the solution when they feel they're not a large part of the problem?
Yeah, it's ongoing enlightenment campaign, but this has to be at national scale, diagonally, vertically, and horizontally. Everybody getting involved, a lot of investment going into creating awareness, and doing climate knowledge management, and letting people know that when you give them that information, and we've done a couple of projects that shows that when even people who are in the rural areas, when you give them the information and empower them with that, then they act in the best interest of their community, in the best interest of the environment, and in the best interest of their health. So let's take, for instance, pollution. The 5 cities in Nigeria are among out of 20 worst cities by particulate matter emission. We have about 4 cities in Nigeria: Kaduna, Aba, Umuahia, and Onitsha, featuring on that list. So there is also a study that has been done that shows that pollution contributes. Pollution reduces almost 5 years from life expectancy here in Nigeria. And for you to also understand how our health is tied to the environment and some of the unsustainable practices that we do, you now look at use of firewood for cooking. We are losing almost 90,000 Nigerian women every year, and that's World Health Organization statistics. So this is really very important to let people know that we're acting in certain unsustainable ways, it's actually endangering their own lives and compromising their health. So this is the key message. It's not something that is abstract, which was what the most of the communication in the last 2 decades and in the last decade were just kind of abstract. People saw the environment as something that is abstract, but now the strategic communication is now linking climate change and environmental pollution and environmental issues, to their health and also to their livelihoods. And this is really helping to get the people to respond. For instance, when you tell people that when people who use firewood and have been using this firewood for cooking all their lives, and you tell them this is what is happening and engage them in a non-judgmental way, and they are able to see that, if they are able to adopt cleaner cooking and improve cook stove solutions, that they will also, first of all, be preserving their health, then, preserving their livelihood and also their environment, and helping their community and boosting and enhancing public health, both for their community and the society at large. So this is really very important. A lot of resources will need to go into this awareness creation. Unfortunately, most private sector organizations have not really been living up to expectation. The government also have not really been living up to that expectation. So you will expect the National Orientation Agency to really, a lot of resources to be devoted to that agency to now take this knowledge and take this information to the rural areas. And that's what we expect to see in the next couple of years.
Very good, Stanley. Now, you talked about this being on a national scale, the problems we're talking about, climate conditions. Now, in terms of legislation for renewable energy and, of course, for the environment, are the current authorities aware of the need to pursue this viable option and enact legislation, laws that will, come to that effect and aid a cleaner environment? How proactive are they? And what is your group's role in this direction in creating that awareness you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, let me start with the role that we play at the climate strategies. Climate strategies is actually a global climate change governance think tank. We engage governments and engage development partners and countries on G7 countries or developed countries and developing countries, bringing everybody together, especially pulling in a lot of knowledge from the academia. And we recognize that in Africa especially, the problem has always been the development actors, the three critical development actors acting in silos. So we are making a lot of efforts to bring those development actors together, sit them down, get them on the same table and on the same page of this is really the way for development for us to pursue sustainable development in Africa. So that is really ongoing. To your second question about renewable energy, it's, of course, for countries like Nigeria, we've done, and that will come up maybe in next year or in the next 2 years. But elsewhere, climate strategies help some some countries and some industries to migrate away, to transit away from fossil fuel, maybe coal, to renewable energy. So some of the coal mines or coal workers, we reviewed, we did a project in Poland that tried to mainstream the people who were working in coal mines that have been decommissioned, and now train them and empower them with skills that they will now be relevant in the renewable energy sector that is booming. So most of them were trained or recommended to be trained in solar installation, small hydropower installation and all of that. So this is also something that in the next couple of years we'll start seeing them happening in Africa. For Nigeria, we are still heavily dependent, no matter what the politicians will say, but we are still heavily dependent on revenue from petroleum. And if you would really look at that level of dependence and see, compare with what other countries like Saudi Arabia that used to be heavily dependent on petroleum, on hydrocarbon, what they are doing. So they've, first of all, the Saudi Aramco, they've diversified and spread their risk by taking that company and doing an IPO, and now releasing some of their equity and allowing people to bring in their money, and they recouped money that they are now investing in renewable energy. We are not seeing that happening in our petroleum industry. A whole lot of our conversation is still heavily dependent. Of course, the budget, they tell you crude oil benchmark. So you saw what happened last year with the COVID-19 pandemic. This took a dive. The price went down, and that's also affected Nigeria. So in that aspect, we are yet to see Nigeria doing, engaging, pulling away and pivoting away from that dependence on crude oil. An organization like NNPC should have been privatized or commercialized as exactly what the people in Saudi Arabia did. But you still have a whole lot of dependence on that, and we want the president to really rise to the occasion and get NNPC and to commercialize and bring in private resources so that government can make some money from there before the fast emerging global low carbon economy catches up with us. We are talking about the next 10 years. Crude oil and petroleum will not really be as relevant as they are today. So that's the concern that we have, and that's where Nigeria needs. We have a lot of work to do.
Okay, speaking of rising to the occasion and the fact that we have a lot of work to do, I want to get your take. Seeing as you're the CEO of Schrödinger Green Tech, a Nigerian-based corporate climate change consultancy, and I just want to put it to you that possibly we have a culture where we're not so used to using the carrot approach to incentivize people to develop new habits. So you mentioned, other cultures where they're somehow managing to subsidize and incentivize. What do you advocate for in terms of incentivizing business enterprises to key into the restoration project and maybe even renewable energy?
Yeah, you are right. That's where the government comes in, because no matter how you look at it, the government sets the stage for economic actors. They build the platform and set it for the economic actors to play. And most times, the stage is tilted, to encourage, bad behavior on the part of the private sector and the corporate sector. So we want to see the government coming up with framework, very deliberate policies to reward companies who are moving towards renewable energy, companies who are, decarbonizing their operation. That has to happen. Maybe a tax rebate, maybe tax waivers, VAT waivers, and all of that. So we need to set the mechanism for us to be able to track and monitor how people are responding to that. And that has to come by way of legislation. I am aware that we did a comprehensive work in the 8th National Assembly, where we came up with the draft for the Nigeria climate change legislation. The president is yet to assent to that bill. So we hope that when that bill is passed into law, that we are going to have some of these incentives being locked in that legal document. So people can actually go to court to challenge bad behavior from corporate organizations. Of course, if you've been following the trend, oil companies now have been, civil society organizations and communities have been taking class action against oil companies in other jurisdictions. 2 weeks ago, Shell got express order from a court to begin to set concrete and measurable low-carbon strategies to decarbonize the operations. I'm also aware that most of the other oil companies are in court, and people are making claims to say that you knew that what your business was really damaging the environment and killing people, so you have to pay now. And that's really the trend. And I hope that the national, our local private, our local oil companies, not the IOCs, now the Nigerian oil companies and players in the oil industry are monitoring this development. So it's really, without incentives, it will be difficult to get people to, for instance, gather their plastic waste and now take it to a particular place and earn some kind of bonus or earn some kind of coupon to use to get something else. So it's really a key, what is also lacking in our jurisdiction here. It's just private enterprises trying to create a business model around this, but the government needs to move in and create a platform that enables big organizations to begin to decarbonize the operations, with the hope that they are going to earn some kind of tax waivers and similar incentives.
Okay, thank you so much. And again, happy World Environment Day. Stanley Ijeoma, Nigeria's country representative and member of the Committee of Chairs on the board of the World Council of Renewable Energy. Thank you for being with us on the morning show.